Okay, so questions?
Ice. Ice.
Ice is a personal thing. I always tell people if it feels good, do it. There's two theories. The newer theory is don't ice because it gets in the way of the healing and recovery period. The other theory is that I don't really care what the new theory is. It feels good on my arm to ice.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. I iced. When I played, I liked it. Todd, what'd you do?
I iced. Yeah.
I liked it. I think sometimes we overthink things. And I think that icing is one of them. The Diamondbacks had a policy with one of our pitchers. And they told him if he ices, because he loved icing, loved it, we never not ice. They said if you ice in front of us, meaning in the clubhouse, like you have to go down the street to the liquor store to get ice.
Right.
Then we're going to put you in the DL.
Yeah.
So that means you're hurt. Amazing.
Yep.
So I hope that answered your question. If you believe in icing, do it. I did. I liked it. I can tell you right now, even though I rarely throw, I might throw 2-3 times a month. I kill my tubing. That's the only thing that saves me from doing that. I would never need ice anymore. I could, if I was in shape, I could probably go to about 250 probably every day. And maybe some days I wouldn't throw down quite as intensely. I'm talking about not necessarily getting on a mound. That makes my arm feel better. I'll get in a cycle from doing that. I might start off 3 or 4 times a week. After about a month, the more I do that, the better my arm feels. It's simple. Now don't mistake that from throwing on a mound. It's a different animal throwing on a mound. You got to know how to recover off of a mound. Number one, what did you learn today? And I'm going to ask a few of you kids, so you better be ready. Okay, you're on now. Showtime's over. What did you learn today about throwing? We went out here today. It took almost 2 hours. Obviously, it's not going to take you that long. What was different today about throwing? Normally, you come out and you know you're going to go play catch and get loose. Do you look at throwing differently now today? How come?
Throw more in not as at an angle.
Anything else that really stuck out to you? Would you have prepared as long as we did? Would you have got your arm in that kind of shape? No, so you learned that there's a little more preparation, right? You. What did you learn today?
Well, I also learned the arc thing. I always used to think that when warming up to throw in a straight line, because, and when you throw, don't go from short to longer really fast.
Good.
And decrease slowly.
Great.
Right.
Great answer.
Awesome.
What did you pick up today?
Stretch it out, going outward, and start zoning in as you're coming in.
So,
About the arc on the way out, and then on my side.
this is going to be for a mental training book. It's a mental question. This is heavy. This is heavy duty stuff. When we started getting closer to each other, Josh and I, why do you think those focal points, that having a spot to throw to, why do you think that helped us be more accurate? What's the value of having a focal point?
It keeps your concentration, so you can help keep your arm and drive down all the way.
And what does that help you do if you always have a focal point?
It helps you like follow through and make you concentrate more on it.
I'm going to give you both. That was close enough. You want to add something to it? Oh, you're a veteran though, man. I expect a really good answer. Go ahead.
When you get the focal point, you concentrate more on throwing it to that spot instead of focusing on everything else. Like,
Keep going.
and then like if you're like tired, you focus on keep throwing it at that particular spot rather than decelerating and like wanting to leave and not do it anymore.
It's $2. Good answers, guys. Give me a hand. I can tell you this. For me, if you want to know about where velocity comes from, it comes from this whole workout. It comes from learning how to stretch your arm properly. But truly, going from 4th to 5th gear, A lot of guys have a hard time getting to fifth gear. And the reason why is because they don't really understand the last 5% of the throwing. And that is so important. What you saw Josh and I do, especially at the very end, is we were at 60 feet. And I was thinking, well, for me, it might have been 180 feet today. But normally I'm thinking 250. He was thinking 330, 340. And we were truly taking every ounce of that throw every time. And what it does for us is it allows us to repeat. Because when I'm getting ready to throw, everything's the same. I'm going to take the same curl up. I'm going to balance the same way. I've got the same focal point every time. I'm always throwing at 250 feet every time, including my changeup. I'm always throwing at 250 feet. What happens is my mind gets very consistent. Because my mind, as this gentleman just said, my mind has nothing else to think about except, oh, there's my focal point. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh, there's my focal point. So just make sure I have a good balance point and make sure I throw at 250 feet every time. Well, that's doable to me. Because I do it every day. That's what I like to do. I like to throw at 250 feet. That's my max throw. Does that make sense? Now, if I'm a pitcher, I'm not going to be the pitcher that has troubles with PFP. You know why? Because I made this 90-foot throw on a bunt as a pitcher. I made the 45-foot throw as a pitcher at the very end there. I'm always throwing at 250 feet off the mound. My infielders, they hate me and love me at the same time. Because they're on red alert. When I was in college and we did PFP, they were on red alert. Because if I got a comebacker on a double play, I was aiming about belt high, because I'm used to my focal points from long toss, and it was here every time, with serious fuel on it. Every time. Right here. When I played third base in high school, I aimed around the thighs. It was a little longer to throw. I threw as hard as I could. I don't want that to sound wrong, as hard as I could, but I mean, I threw, well, back then it was probably more like 300 feet. I threw 300 feet, and I aimed for the thighs, and it was magic. Every time, basically, was somewhere around here. I loved it. I couldn't wait to. I used to play in pregame infield. I'd go where the dirt meets the chalk, meets the grass at third base, because I knew if I aimed around the ankles, threw it as hard as I could, it was, for back then, it was pretty impressive. You know, and I knew from a scout, he said, make sure in pregame, make sure you show off everything you can, because that's when scouts can get their best look at you. Yep. So I would go as far as I could, and I enjoyed that. So to me, throwing is enjoyable. Do you notice at the very end, when you guys were getting probably bored, we couldn't stop throwing, could we? Couldn't stop. Let me tell you something. That's fun. When you're hanging out here in the dugout and your elbow's sore and your shoulder's sore and your buddies are playing and you're missing a few games, or worse yet, you're in a doctor's office, I don't care how good of a hitter you are. Once you get in a doctor's office and you have surgery, it's a scary time. And that's the main reason I'm out here. If you do this program relatively well, I can't say you'll never have an arm problem, because you can sleep on your arm wrong one night. But it's really hard to get hurt with this program if you do it right. And I can tell you from 20 years experience, it's a no-brainer. So when I leave here today, you now know that there's some of the stuff that needs to be done before you touch a baseball. Every time. This stuff needs to be done before you touch a baseball. Every time. You're not going to not stretch your hamstrings and go run out to first base as hard as you can. You'll never do that. You know, when you're 12, you might get away with it. When you get to about 14, 15, you're going to snap a hamstring. And guess what your shoulder muscles are going to do if you stop taking care of it? It's not pretty. This program is about being proactive. Your other buddies may come to the field and go down the line and play catch. You don't do that anymore. That's not you. You're trained. You're a trained player.
Yeah, Alan. You know, a lot of these kids are travel ball kids. We practice once, twice a week. They have tournaments every other weekend. Some of these guys are high school guys, college. Some of these guys aren't practicing with their teams right now. How often in the week, right now, say from this point until about January, should all of these kids, say on a high school level, a college level, and then a youth level, how often should they be doing this program per week?
If they're not pitching on a team, like right now, or if they're pitching a minimal amount, at least 3 to 4 days a week.
3 or 4 days a week.
Yeah, and there's always a period of time where kids need a mental break, or they may need a physical break. It's been a long year. But for the most part, yeah, you're looking at 3 to 4 days. Me personally, the more I threw, the better I felt. Right. I'd want to throw basically just about every day. I might go easy on some days. Right. My arm was, you start doing this stuff, and you know, your arm is like, it's like once you start running. Right. You run a couple miles a day, you want to run a couple miles a day. You know, it's just how your body's trained. You stop running a couple miles a day, well, that's people think, oh, I'm going to save my arm and not throw as much. I'm going to save the bullets in my gun is what they talk about. Let me tell you something. You don't have to take my opinion for this, even though I've been doing this a long time. That doesn't work. That's called atrophy. You start thinking that I'm going to save my arm. Now again, I'm not talking about throwing 50 pitches on the mound on a Monday and throwing 80 pitches on the mound on a Tuesday. I'm not talking about that kind of throwing. I'm talking about conditioning off the mound. I believe in regeneration versus degeneration. You stay off the mound, or I'm sorry, you stop throwing, the arm just atrophies. You know, anybody ever broke a muscle? I haven't, but when you have a cast on your leg, only imagine the life force in your leg is just gone, right? It's just probably hard to walk for a while, right? My analogy is you're sitting on a plane ride for 5 hours. You don't get up and stretch.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm suffocated. I have to get up and stretch, or I'm going to go crazy.